side of our product create, it's time to just take a few steps back and do it from scratch, as in raw HTML, and then move up the chain as to how we can get and understand how this model form actually works. So one of the first things that I'm going to do is actually get rid of the Django related stuff. So those two things are now gone, right? So we have only one HTML input here, and that is to save it. So the first input that I want to actually put in here is input type equals to text, and the name is going to be title, as in what do we want to call this input? I'm giving it, the input itself is a name. So I can use title, I can say my title. Neither one of those actually makes a huge difference, which we'll see why in a moment. So we got input type, text, name, title, and we can also add in something called a placeholder where we can just say your title. This is just kind of giving them some information. We'll see what that is in just a minute. Okay, next thing is in the view itself, I'm going to go ahead and comment this one out and create a brand new one that only renders out empty context and no form related data. Okay, so we've really just backed up a lot and redid this view. Okay, so we look at this and we look at that view. Let's go ahead and take a look at it inside of Create. And we've got your title here with a save button. If I type out ABC and hit save, I get this CSRF verified failed. Okay. Now, why is that happening? Well, it actually has to do with our method here. So if I change that method to get, what happens? I refresh and say ABC, hit save. It seems like something happened, but what you might have noticed is the URL changed. You see, get methods are what is the default method for a form. So if I just typed out a form like this and rendered it and said something else, it will change the URL. This is actually very similar to like when you want to do a search on your website. But instead of doing a search and going into the nitty-gritty of that, what we are going to do is keep that method of post. Okay. So we save that and refresh, try ABC again, and we get this forbidden yet again. Now, this has to do with security measures that Django has built in. Now, a big part of the reason for this is something called action. So if we type out action and we set it to, let's say, a different URL, let's do like /search, and let's go ahead and bring that method of get back. And I type in, let's do a refresh in here, type in ABC, hit save. Whoa, what happens? It takes me to a different URL as well as a different, also including that data that I actually put in. So action then means that you can send it to a completely different URL. So what if I did the same thing with like Google? So www.google.com/search. I'm actually going to get rid of that trailing slash there. And I'm also going to change the name here to Q, and then we'll just say your search. We save that, and we refresh in here. We've got your search, and I'll do Django CFE, hit save. Hey, what do you know? I actually performed a Google search right there. And what's pretty cool is Coding for Entrepreneurs came up a lot. That's awesome. I like seeing that. Okay, but what's more important here is understanding that, hey, I just created my own Google search form, which is really nice for one feature. But the other part is none of this in here is related to Django. So you actually learned a couple things. Number one, the action will send the form to whatever URL you put there. Now, if we actually change this method to post, just like that, and now search the Django CFE, let's just refresh in here, and now search that, hit save, we get a 405 error. The request method post is inappropriate for this URL. Now that hopefully makes sense. If it doesn't, I'll explain it in just a second, but it's pretty cool. We can actually change the action and we can change the method. Now by default, what happens is the action goes to the current URL. So if you do period here, You can see it as an empty string or period. Either way, it's going to go to what this URL is. Pretty nice. And then it's going to use that post method. So again, we're going to change this back to being title and your title. And then we save that and do ABC. I hit save. And again, I get that forbidden call once again. So to override that problem, we do CSRF token. Okay, so we save that and we refresh in here. Confirm form resubmission. We can say yes. Let's try it again. And there we go. So it actually goes away. So the data seems to be going through. Now, what the heck is get and post? Now, get request is meaning that you go to any URL. So when I go to any URL on my page, like about, contact, whatever, you are getting information from that. When you want to save information in the back end, we use post. Kind of like mailing a letter to somebody, you post it, right? This is very similar, and we just use two different types of requests to do that. Now, what's happening is actually not a whole lot different. Like the backend can treat both kinds of data in the same way, which we can see in our actual view itself. So our view itself has those two methods built in. So if we do print request.get and print request.post, we can actually see what's going on with either one. So with get, if I just refresh the page here, I see that I've got this query dictionary that's empty. And what I can actually do is say, title equals to something, right? So I have changed my get request because I changed my URL. I can now see in here that I've got some data coming through from there. So this is an actual dictionary that I could say get.get or, grabbing the actual item, key value pair there, and that will print out whatever title I put in here. So if I said, yeah, this is a title, it's going to actually print that out for me in the back end. Pretty cool. So yes, you can absolutely save this data. I don't recommend doing that. Using get is an unsafe method for saving data. That is why there's this security feature for post. And that's not unique to Django. It's certainly not unique to any web application. It's a general rule of thumb to when you have post, you want to add in some security. Now the reason why is that if I was going to have this title in my URL, then a hacker or somebody else can just use a link that changes it to being something like this. And that would quite literally change the title for me. It starts to bring up all sorts of security questions that you may have. So instead of doing that, we use request post, right? So I'm going to get rid of this part of the get call. And then inside of my form, I still have it at post. So I can get rid of all that and do ABC, hit save. And now what I see is all of that data coming through. Pretty cool. So that means the very last part of this is I can actually come in here and say title equals to request.post.get title. And I'm using .get for the dictionary itself to grab what's in there. And that's going to be the title I would use. And then I'm actually not going to save it because I don't want to put all of the information in. But if I did product.objects.create title equals to my new title, right? So my new title. And then I had every other field in there. I could then go about actually saving that requested post data, which is denoted by just printing out that data itself, right? And getting rid of these request methods here. Okay, so I hit save, ABC, hit save, and there we go. We've got our title being printed out. Let's go ahead and save it again and try it one more time. Not refresh. ABC, we hit submit, and all I see is ABC. At the very first, I see none. Now, why is it that I see none at the very first? It's because we don't have any post data by default. So there's a lot of things that I still need to dive into when it comes to this, but What I just showed you is how you would write a raw HTML form in Django, and then just generally how you would create the data from that. There's one thing that you could do is say is if request.method equals to post, then you can run through and do all of that stuff. And that's okay. So that's asking for the method, whatever that method is, will give you, get, post, or a few of the other HTML methods, and then you could go ahead and save it. And then that way, when you refresh on that page, it won't say none first, like it did, right? Instead, it will just only render out ABC. It says none there because I copied and pasted it, but let's just hit enter a lot and just illustrate the point. I refresh that page. I got my GET request there. I do ABC, hit save. I got my post request and the actual post data. Cool. So if this is unclear at all, you might want to look into more about HTML forms themselves. Please let me know in the comments. But this is really a bad method of saving data. It's really, really poor because we're not validating if this is good data at all. We're not cleaning this data. So we want to make sure that we do that. And that's another topic that we need to discuss. And we'll